Hearing Loss Live talks with Michael Conley.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Hearing Loss Live. Today is about connections. If you haven't figured it out yet, we're really big on connections and how important they are with the hearing loss world. And in connections, Shelley sent us an email about somebody she met, Michael Conley, linked us to his webpage, and we read through his webpage and his play, and we're like, oh yeah, he's got to be on our podcast, got to be on our podcast. Shelley, I'd like you to talk about how you kind of stumbled onto Michael, because again, it's about a connection. And I think it's a connection we try to help advertise.
Yes, this is Shelley. I met Michael because I was attending a Toastmaster, Audible Talkers Toastmaster group. I love to support the hard of hearing community in their meetings, and especially if they're accessible with captions and transcripts and all this great stuff. So I attend that Toastmaster group. And Michael showed up one night. And of course, beside his name, it says readinglips.com. And I was like, oh, I got to get in touch with him. And because he has his website right there, I could go right to it and contact him from there. So I was really happy to make that connection.
And readinglips.com, www.readinglips.com, that was a website I created to promote my play, Reading Lips. And of course, there are other things on there besides just that play, because I've been writing plays for a long time. But Reading Lips is about a man who is kind of between two cultures. At the beginning of the play, he says, am I a gay man who happens to be deaf, or am I a deaf man who just happens to be gay? And when I started writing that play, I thought it was going to be very short. I thought it was going to be like 10, 15 minutes. I didn't know, but I had so much to say. And I didn't know the answer to that question when I started writing it. And I had to do a lot of research. And I met with people who were deaf and gay. I met with people who were deaf and were raised in schools for the deaf, who were like the four of us who were raised reading lips, raised in an oral world. And through that, I got a real sense of a couple of things. First of all, I learned what a big impact having a hearing loss had been in my life. I always thought the defining experience of my life was being gay. And, you grow up, I'm from a small town in Kansas, you grow up, dealing with this, and it's very difficult, and that's what you focus on. But then you get older and you start to think, and especially when I started writing this play, I realized having a hearing loss has made far more of an impact on the choices I've made in life. It's made a big difference, for example, in the fact that I've stayed at jobs a lot longer than my friends. Maybe like some of you, I found a job, I liked the people, I got challenges, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to stay here, because moving to another job involves creating a whole new set of relationships, creating a whole new way of interacting with people. And when I got that, I realized, being hard of hearing, I like to say a person with a hearing loss, being a person with hearing losses have far more impact. One of the things that kind of gave me the impetus to even think about writing the play was a conversation I had with my father when I was an adult. When I was growing up, we had a really terrible relationship. And I think everybody has a hard time with their parents. But in my case, it was very, very difficult. And when we were growing, when I was an adult, I had gone back for the holidays. I was visiting and we're sitting around talking. And all of a sudden he says, I feel terrible. I owe you an apology. I didn't treat you right when you were growing up. And I thought, oh my God, here it comes. I'm so sorry I didn't understand about you being gay and all this stuff. And he said, I never believed you couldn't hear. And I said, what? And he said, when you walked by me and didn't answer me, or when you said what when somebody else talked, it made me so angry. And I thought, that was it? I mean, you grow up with all of these feelings about why things didn't work out. And this was the last thing I would have expected. And that got me to thinking about my own experience. And, when I was thinking about some of the things that we would talk about here today, I was thinking, imagine how many people are out there, walking around, kids who are dealing with self-esteem when they're 12, 10, 12, whatever. And then it turns out their parents, my father, had a master's degree, he taught high school English. Later, he was the vice president of his company. He was a very smart person, but for some reason, that made him angry. And it gave me the impetus to kind of evaluate that about myself, which is what led me to start writing the play. So the play is a full length. As I said, it started short, and it's been given during the course of writing the play, getting it marketed, and then having it produced. It has had what they call staged readings, and this is a thing where you bring people into a theater, you rehearse it. Directors work with the actors and with the author on the characters, but the performance, the actors are holding the script. And a staged reading is just one step. And Reading Lips has had several staged readings. And producers say, yeah, it's an interesting play, but how are we going to market it? Because there are a lot of plays for gay people, and the deaf audience, what are we going to do for deaf people? And so you've got no audience for this play. And that's kind of hard to hear, you've worked on a play, of course there's an audience for it. And I try to explain, this play is about somebody who's kind of caught on the cusp of two cultures. He's part of the deaf community, he's part of the gay community, and where does he fit? Where do I, it's a question I asked, and as I was writing this, where do I fit in this? And I just haven't been able to get it produced. I have one theater in New York promised to produce it, and then they had a change at the top, and they withdrew the offer. And it's hard to not personalize something like that. I mean, you promise something, you should follow through. So it hasn't had a full production. It's had several staged readings. I've gotten good feedback from it, but it hasn't gone to the next level.
This is Shelley, and I have a question that kind of goes with that, and that is that sometimes it can be so hard to get hard of hearing people out to theater. We have the Salt Lake Acting Company here who's gone to above and beyond to make their plays accessible. And I have tried advertising to the hard of hearing to get them to come. And I'm not sure if it's just, we get used to not being accommodated, so we don't think to go, or I just wonder if you have any thoughts on how to mobilize our community a little more and get them active into theater.
Well, I do think certainly things are better than they were even 10 years ago. I think, 20 years ago, the only thing that occurred to people is, oh, I know what, we'll get a couple of ASL interpreters. That'll be fine. And, like most people in the deaf community know, not everybody uses ASL. And what I've noticed is that theaters have now put up ways to have captions on screens on other sides of the walls of a stage, and you can follow it just along. I had an interesting experience with Reading Lips because, as I said, I know some people at Deaf Community Services, and I have one performance that was interpreted. I got some people who were ASL signers, and we have one performance that was interpreted, and people were laughing their heads off. And so I've had the experience of having a non-hearing audience enjoy what's funny about it or relating to what they see in themselves. And I've had the experience of a hearing company, a hearing audience, go through the same experience. So I think, to answer your question, I don't know. San Diego is a good town for theater, but it's hard to find theaters that do interpretive performances, captions. I mean, one thing I think we've all encountered is open caption films. Theaters do not want to show open caption films. They want you to put that little device on the side of your seat that comes up like this, and that's not the same. That's not the same. So at theaters, they're having to break through this. And I got a cochlear implant 15 years ago, and I did use those infrared hearing systems, and they did work for me, but they don't work now. And so I go to theaters, I sit in the front row, I do the best I can. When I went to see Angels in America, it was touring about 20 years ago, I went and I found out that the theater didn't have captions. So I bought the plays, and I don't know if you know Angels in America, but they are long 3-act plays, and there are 2 of them. So I read the plays and I took notes, and I'm trying to cram for an exam during the intermissions. I'm thinking, okay, this is what happened in the first act. This is what's going to be happening in the second act. I'm trying to, because you don't know what's going on. You're looking at the production. You're looking at the great actors. You hear some snippets of dialogue, but to put that all together is hard without captions.
That was going to be one of my questions. I was wondering if your play had open captions. But again, you said you didn't have an open caption performance.
Well, for it to have an open caption performance, the theater would have to invest a lot of money, and they're not going to invest in a play that is only having a rehearsed reading. If they agreed to produce it, it would cost nothing to have captions. I mean, once you make that commitment, it'll be very easy to do it. But I can't do that. I can't, afford to do captions for a play. So I did the best I could by bringing in the ASL interpreters. But again, I had to accept that that would only be useful for a certain percentage of the audience. Having said that, I mean, there were several readings of that particular staging, and I really marketed it to the deaf community. I got the director of Deaf Community Services to come, and he brought his friends. And it's funny, I recently met a woman. I met a woman who I am involved in an ASL group with, and the play came up, and she said, I saw that. I didn't know it was you. I saw that. I came that night. That was kind of interesting to hear somebody, 10, 15 years later, repeating what she liked about the play. I mean, it's very flattering.
Yeah, that's exciting. I know I tried to attend a play many years ago with just lip reading, and you really can't do lip reading at plays, I found out. So I think it's cool that you have this play called Reading Lips, and I hope, that it can get up and get out there so that people understand more.
Yeah, I think one of the things also that I got out of writing the play is developing this sense of deaf pride, because in doing this research, I learned a lot about the deaf community that I didn't know. And to kind of put this in perspective, I went to graduate school, I moved to New York to go to college anyway, and then I took this class, and coming to terms with my father, and then it's like, okay, maybe I should look into this deaf thing. And so I had to do some research. And one of the things that I found about the deaf community is how embracing it is. I said to one person I was talking to, so would you consider me a deaf person? He said, oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that's so great about the deaf community. It's big tent. They want everybody to feel like they're part of it. And so when I was doing the research, I remember back when I was a student, I remember the Deaf President Now movement. And this was at Gallaudet University. They had never had a deaf president. There had always been hearing presidents. And these students had done their homework, they laid the foundation, and then they announced it's going to be another hearing person. And these students, these late teen and early 20 students, they got together and they shut down the campus. And then they started moving out. They got the postal workers to refuse to deliver the mail. And then they got the media involved. And the university had to back down completely. They had to say, okay, they fired the board of directors president. They got rid of the person that they had announced was going to be their new president. They brought in somebody different. And it was all because of these excited young people who saw a different world. And when I was a student at Gallaudet, just for the summer, taking ASL classes, that was the first place I went. I went to the president's office. I went upstairs on the second floor of this building because I knew that's where it had happened. And I thought, this is history. And you know, you're talking about theater. I mean, the National Theater of the Deaf has been around for over 50 years. How many theater companies last 50 years? And this company has been out there working full time. And that's a sense of pride. I mean, you know, all of these things are things, and the people who came before us, I mean, every culture has people. The African-American community has people, the gay community. The deaf community has people who have really changed, you know, that world. And so that developed a sense of deaf pride for me that I didn't even realize was there.
There's a rallying cry right now in the disability community called where they're saying nothing about us without us. And I have to agree with that. If you really want change and acceptance and invitation and inviting others to the table, you got to really involve the community that they're involved in and let them be a part of it. Because it is amazing how many times throughout history that people have changed the status quo by nothing without us. Nothing about us without us.
And what the people that they need to bring to the table are the hearing people or more people who have hearing loss? Which?
For instance, if it's going to be about hearing loss, they should really involve the hard of hearing community totally, just like the deaf would with the Deaf Now president. You know, if they really want us to have a say, then they need to invite us to the table.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I agree with that completely. I think things are better than they were. I think that gives the opportunity to go even further. It's not that expensive to put up the technology that would make it possible to interpret every play. And in fact, we were talking, Michelle, on Saturday about CART. I mean, how hard would it be to put up a giant screen TV and have somebody key in what the actors are saying in real time? So the technology is there. It's just a commitment. And you were saying, Shell, that maybe deaf people, maybe people with hearing loss don't go to theater often enough. I'm not sure what the reason is, but the technology is definitely there. So I've written other plays. You were asking before we started about the other plays. I mean, written, I started off at Columbia as a screenwriting student. I wanted to write movies. I wanted to be a big screenwriter. And so one summer I took classes in writing dialogue. I thought that would help me. I took classes in playwriting. I thought, oh, that'll help. And I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with playwriting because it's so economical. You have to depend on the dialogue to convey so much. And so I had to finish my thesis as a screenplay. I had to finish that. It was kind of hard because I was bored by that time, but I was off taking all kinds of playwriting classes. And so based on that, afterwards, I just wrote a lot of shorter plays. And people ask me, are your plays, comedies or dramas? And I'm always intrigued that people say that. I think it reflects the fact that they think of things as just being one or the other. And what I like to say is I write serious plays that have humor, because I could never write like Eugene O'Neill. I mean, I could never write a big tragedy. I write plays that are about serious things. And I think for me, what is serious is people trying to make a connection with each other. And that's always true. But I hold up people. There was a very famous playwright from the early 20th century, George Kaufman, who wrote about serious things. And he was kind of a personal hero. But for us, a lot of people think of Neil Simon, who wrote plays, who was just telling jokes. And some of his early plays were really just funny. But some of those later ones, like Class is Sweet, and especially Lost in Yonkers, those are very serious plays, but they're funny. The audience is just having a great time. So I try to find things that I think will be of interest. If they're of interest to me, I think they'll be of interest to other people. So, I've written some plays about being gay. I've written plays. I wrote a play about social media, because I think personally social media is kind of denigrating real life. People who take photographs of dinners and post them while they're eating, I just find that silly. And I wrote a play about Rudolph Bing, who was the artistic director of the Metropolitan Opera back in the 1950s. And he had a kind of an interesting life because he was such a powerful man. And then in his later years, he developed Alzheimer's. And his life kind of turned into a joke for the newspapers. And I wanted to write about, well, what is it when a man has had a career like that? What really endures? And so I brought in Maria Callas, who had had a wonderful career in opera, but she was kind of a joke because her boyfriend dumped her and married Jacqueline Kennedy. So what do these two people have that they worked so hard to create culture and art that enriched other people, and yet at the end of their lives, they're just kind of dismissed? And I wanted to write about, well, what really endures? And I think in their case, the art is what goes on, that lives on. We don't think, people who are opera fans don't think so much about Jacqueline Kennedy now, but they did back in the 60s. People fortunately have forgotten that Rudolph Bing was a joke because he had been married and the judges came in and annulled the marriage. What we remember now is the great artist that he brought. And so that was something I wanted to focus on for that. Right now, I'm working on a play that I think will be kind of interesting because when I was in New York, I bought standing room all the time. I couldn't afford to buy tickets. Nobody can buy tickets. And I used to go to the ballet. I loved the ballet because it's an art form that doesn't involve listening to dialogue, it doesn't involve hearing people sing. I loved it. I had taken ballet classes myself when I was a kid. And so I started going to ballet. And the way I could afford was to buy standing room. So you go, it was a whole ritual. You go down early in the morning, you get in place in line, you wait until the tickets go on sale, then you go to work or do whatever you're going to do during the day, and then you come back and you stand for 3 hours. And that takes a real commitment. For somebody to get up early in the morning, I mean, get down there at like 7 or 8, wait until the box office opens at 10. That's a real commitment. And I did that sometimes several times a week. I just loved it so much. And I met these interesting people. And these people, in some cases, they've come to terms with the fact that this is the closest they're going to get to art, to culture. They're not going to be themselves famous dancers. And some of them have had careers, some of them are not sure, but you bring all these people together and they're fascinating. So the play is just about them waiting to buy the tickets. It's not about the performance or anything else. It's just about them. And I met some wonderful people. It was a great experience. So that's what I'm working on now.
I love it. That is going to be a very awesome play, in my opinion, because you're right. That's where, there's just such a diverse set of people that you're going to meet in that standing section. I saw Shelley's eyes kind of go for a question because around here, we don't have that. I knew what you were talking about because, okay, I'm a baseball freak. But in San Francisco, they actually have it set up outside the stadium so people can watch from outside the stadium, the games, and you're supposed to be onerous and share with each other. So those that couldn't quite get a ticket can enjoy the game as well from outside the stadium. So I love that. And I know New York does that quite a bit with some of their stuff. So
yeah, I did most of the standing at the Metropolitan Opera House, which because they brought in so many different ballet companies. And there was all this juggling about, well, what level are you going to stand in? And people wanted to be in the first 20 places because those were the best standing places. And, you would hear people talk about stuff and would think, this person had dreams that weren't realized and they're here now. And so the whole experience, and you get the same people over and over, because at theater, if somebody goes to stand for Hamilton, that's it. They see the play, that's it. If they go and stand for something else, but for the ballet, the repertoire changes every night. So you see the same people throughout the week. So you develop a friendship, relationship.
That's super exciting. We're going to run a little long, so I hope everybody will sit through the podcast. My timer's gone off, but I love this story about the standing play. It's just got me kind of excited. Any other questions for Michael from you young ladies in the audience here?
I just really appreciate you being here and talking about it, because
Absolutely.
I've learned things. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful. I really enjoyed meeting all of you and just having a chance to think about all of this before we met to talk.
If you're a small theater, and I'm going to start with small, because if you're a large theater, I think you should look into it too. But if you're a small theater and you're looking to change some things up, I think you really need to go to www.readinglips.com and read through Michael's plays. I loved it. And all I did is read what he had on the website. So I really think this could be a change for inclusion for a very small theater, a medium-sized theater, or a large theater. I do know San Diego has a couple theaters that offers open captions. Vicki Turner, who's one of the people we've podcast with before, actually goes down there and keeps a board and offers captioning. So we know it's possible. And, I know a lot of them have ASL night too. So there's 3 different populations that can really come together and see what I think is just a great, I wouldn't call it a drama and I wouldn't call it a comedy, but it really was a thoughtful, who am I? And I really get into that stuff. Of course, we know that because we like to go to the Salt Lake Acting Company's plays. So, hint, hint, Natalie, hint, hint. Love to see it here in Utah. If you're listening and you're enjoying this, we hope you've learned something. We hope you come back. We hope you subscribe, share, like. Come to our Talk About It Tuesday. I believe it's going to be in about 2 weeks. It's the first Tuesday of every month. And we just have an open chat. Sign up for our email list, info@hearinglostlive.com, where you can learn what events are going on. We don't spam your folders. We don't sell your information. It really is just for our twice a month newsletter. And if we have workshops and whether they're free or if there's a charge, if you've got somebody you'd like them to learn more about either how to incorporate captioning, CART, or you have a friend struggling with hearing loss and you don't know where to send them to us. We help you help yourself. We've got many trainings for businesses. If you're a theater who doesn't know how to find out about open captions, come to us. We have contacts. We'd love to hear more. hearinglostlive.com. Oh, teaser alert. There's going to be some coffee shops that are going to be live. So watch for an area near you where you can come meet us in person and we can share some coffee. Bye.
Hearing Loss Live wants to meet you. Watch it on our website for times and locations for in-person coffee chats. Have a good summer.